The Omega was Earth's crown jewel. Sleek, silver, and alive with humming energy, it was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever dared to send beyond the known. It departed under skies lit with celebration, trailing behind it decades of ambition and the weight of a planet's hope. Captain Arya Drax stood at the helm that day, her eyes unblinking as Earth shrank behind her on the view screen, already planning the next 1,000 light years ahead. She was known for her composure, her insight under fire, and a mind sharpened by solitude and science. If anyone could command the Omega into deep space and back, it was her. They called it the Omega Initiative, part diplomacy, part exploration, and entirely a gamble. Earth's political bodies had unified in rare agreement to fund a deep space expedition to the Perseid Expanse, a mysterious sector scattered with dead stars and unexplained energy signatures. It was a chance to lead, to find something untouched, or perhaps to never return. The crew, 97 souls, were the best from every hemisphere. Scientists with fields barely classified, engineers who could rewire a reactor blindfolded, and soldiers too skilled to wear rank openly. Among them, Lieutenant Callan Rourke stood out. Young but unshakable, he was Aria's trusted second. Less visionary, more realist. His voice often the tether that brought lofty ideas back down to metal and protocol. The Omega's disappearance was as sudden as it was silent. On its 73rd day outbound, its transmission ceased mid-sentence. There was no signal drift, no signs of damage. One moment, it was pinging status updates from Deep Space Beacon Vorten 9. The next, it was a void. Earth's first response was disbelief, then panic. Search vessels fanned across the expanse for months, but not a single trace was found. No debris, no signal. It was as if the ship had never been. Earth mourned, then turned on itself. The loss fractured the brief global unity forged to build the Omega. Some accused rival nations of sabotage. Others whispered about interstellar threats or AI betrayal. Conspiracy networks exploded, offering theories from alien abduction to dimensional collapse. But in time, the noise dulled, replaced by a hollow silence. The Omega became a monument, its name etched into stone walls, its crew immortalized in bronze. Arya Drax, her crew, the ship, all gone. Decades passed. Humanity pushed forward, slower, more cautious. Space stations multiplied in orbit, but no missions ventured past Mars without redundant fail-safes and armed escorts. Earth watched the stars with a wary eye, unwilling to reach too far again. Then, without warning, the Omega returned. It didn't announce itself. It simply appeared, one moment absent, the next suspended in high Earth orbit, as if it had never left. Scanners screamed. Its design had changed. The once smooth hull now bristled with interlocked geometry that bent light unnaturally. Blue veins of energy pulsed along its sides, feeding into spiraling structures that hadn't existed at launch. It was the Omega, unmistakably, yet not the same. From the command center of Orbital Defense Station Theta, Admiral Naira Lennox watched in stunned silence. She had been a child when the Omega vanished, her first memory the image of Aria's face frozen on a flickering broadcast. Now, as the ship loomed outside her viewport, she felt the same awe, now colored with fear. "Still no response?" she asked. "No comms, ma'am," replied the officer beside her, adjusting controls with nervous precision. "It's not even using standard frequencies. We're getting something, but it's not language." Naira narrowed her eyes. "It's broadcasting. A pattern. Structured pulses. Energy signatures like it's talking to itself. All over Earth, alarm protocols activated. Defensive satellites armed plasma batteries. Spaceports locked down. Civilians, watching the news feeds cascade, remember the old fears, the old loss. Was it a ghost? A threat? A trick? For the first 12 hours, the Omega did nothing but hover. Then a soft pulse spread from its core, harmless but undeniable, a signal impossible to ignore. Naira authorized a recon ship to approach, its sensors sweeping the altered surface. The readings made no sense. Materials that absorbed scans, radiation levels that fluctuated between real and theoretical. And then the ship opened, a hatch iris wide, not where one had ever existed before. From the void, a single figure emerged, walking along the newly formed platform like gravity bent to her will. Her form was unmistakable, yet subtly wrong. Captain Arya Drax. The same eyes, the same stance, but her outline shimmered, as though reality didn't quite agree on her shape. Energy spiraled around her, a lattice of symbols rotating slowly behind her like a halo made of code and light. She didn't speak. She simply stared at the recon ship, and then up at the defense station beyond. Her gaze pierced through sensors, through metal and air, and into the control room, where Naira stood frozen. "She's alive," someone whispered. Naira's voice was quiet, or something close to it. On the surface of Earth, people wept. They screamed. They dropped to their knees. Across religions and governments, a single question lit up like wildfire. Had the Omega come home, or brought something else back with it? The Defense Council convened within the hour. No one could yet answer the question that burned in every human mind. Why had the Omega returned, and what had it become? The Omega hovered above Earth like a judgment, silent, massive, and unknowable. No signal came, no demand, no greeting. Yet something about its presence felt intentional, chosen, as if it waited. Inside the Orbital Defense Station Theta, Admiral Naira Lennox studied the holographic projections of the vessel. Its outer structure had shifted since its return, growing filigree-like appendages that shimmered between dimensions. The metal wasn't metal anymore. It behaved more like thought given form, responding to observation, reshaping under scrutiny. Nothing about it aligned with terrestrial physics. She stood alone in the observation chamber, the room dim except for the cold blue glow from the rotating model of the Omega. A whisper of static buzzed in her earpiece. "Admiral, we're getting a signal." Localized burst. "Tight beam to Theta only." "Patch it through," she ordered. The projection changed. Not into words, not into an image, but into presence, immediate and vast. For an instant, Naira felt herself pulled into memory that wasn't hers. Stars folding into knots, great machines orbiting dead suns, a silence so complete it rang like a bell. Then it passed. A voice followed, unmistakable and unchanged despite decades. "This is Captain Arya Drax of the Omega. I request audience." The control room below erupted in movement, but Naira remained still. Her hands tightened behind her back, her breath shallow. "Confirm identity," she said flatly. The voice returned, softer. "Mission password," Gamma Eclipse read. "Override code Delta 9. Encrypted by your predecessor, Admiral Shale." It matched. Perfectly. 5 hours later, they met in the secure hangar bay. No guards. No weapons. Only air so charged with unease it felt like lightning hung in it. Arya Drax stepped forward. Still in uniform, though it no longer bore any insignia. Her eyes glowed faintly, not metaphorically, but with actual radiance. Her presence bent the light subtly, giving her the impression of always being half elsewhere. Behind her, a field of geometric light hung like a cloak, fading in and out of visibility. Naira spoke first. "You vanished without a trace. No signals. No wreckage. Now you return with technology we can't identify. What happened to you?" Arya studied her, head tilted. When she spoke, it was careful. "We passed into a region of space beyond space. A fold, an intersection between what we know and what exists beneath knowing. We were not destroyed. We were observed. Transformed." Naira folded her arms. "By whom?" "They call themselves the Architects." Silence pulsed between them. "They are not like us," Arya continued. "They are older than thought. They construct civilizations like we write poems, briefly, beautifully, and without attachment. They found us curious. They opened us. And when we were whole again, we were different." Naira's voice tightened. "You speak as if you volunteered. We didn't understand the choice until it was made. But it was made for survival, for evolution." She gestured toward the Omega outside the viewports. "We are a bridge now, between what you were and what you must become." The implication hung heavy. Naira took a slow step forward. "You want to share this technology?" "No," Arya said. "We must." The gift is not generosity. It is necessity. Naira felt the undercurrent then. The looming weight behind Arya's words. There's something coming. Yes, Arya said, her eyes distant now, as if watching something rise from the darkness of time. The no, an entropy-born intelligence. It consumes order, collapses meaning. It is already on its way. Our disappearance drew its attention. Earth is no longer hidden. Naira's throat went dry. So you return to warn us? To prepare you, Arya corrected. You have a narrow window to evolve, to stand. If you refuse, you will vanish like so many before you, dust devoured by dark. The next day, the Omega began its demonstration. It reshaped a derelict satellite in orbit without touching it, twisting its materials like clay and infusing it with light that pulsed in rhythmic code. It transmitted data in formats no one had ever conceived, languages that seemed to write themselves inside observers' minds. Engineers called it impossible. Linguists called it divine. Within 72 hours, Earth was split. Some hailed a return as salvation, the next step in human ascension. Others saw infection, corruption by an unknowable intelligence. A faction within the Defense Council demanded containment. Omega must be quarantined or destroyed. Naira stood in the center of that storm, pulled between fear and awe. The world beneath her buzzed with speculation. Riots sparked. Pilgrims knelt in the streets. Conspiracy flared brighter than before. But above all, one question remained unanswered. What had truly happened to Arya Drax and her crew? And were they still human enough to be saved? The council chamber aboard Station Theta trembled with the hum of debate, but no one raised their voice above a low murmur. To speak too loudly felt obscene, like screaming in a cathedral. At the center of the circular table sat Admiral Naira Lennox, her expression carved from stone. The eyes that once carried the fire of ambition now held something else, uncertainty tinged with dread. Across from her, Dr. Kaito Miles, lead systems theorist, rotated a holographic projection of the Omega's reconstructed satellite, its fractal structure defying known laws of geometry. It's not just technology, he said, voice brittle with disbelief. It's recursive design layered over quantum impermanence. This thing rebuilds itself faster than we can measure it. It's learning from us while we try to learn from it. Naira didn't respond immediately. Her attention lingered on the far end of the room, where Lieutenant Callan Rourke, formerly presumed dead with the Omega crew, stood silently. He was part of the returned, one of 27 crew members who had disembarked with Arya. But unlike her, Rourke didn't glow. He didn't shimmer. He looked whole, human, and yet something in his stillness made people uneasy. It was too controlled, too perfect. She finally spoke. Are you saying it's alive? Kaito nodded, his hands trembling slightly. Not sentient, something more. It's reactive, anticipatory. It's as if the ship remembers everything it's ever observed and folds it into its structure. Rourke turned his head slowly. It is a vessel of translation. We were shown what lies beyond language. Naira met his gaze. What happened to the others? They remained with the Omega. Some became part of it. Others chose integration. You mean assimilation? Kaito snapped. You were rewritten, reprogrammed. Rourke offered a faint smile. No, we were translated. Kaito scoffed and stepped back, muttering under his breath. But Naira kept her eyes on Rourke. There was a fragility in his words, something rehearsed yet straining to convey meaning that eluded conventional syntax. She recognized it, the language of trauma masked by philosophy. Later, alone in her quarters, she rewatched the footage of Arya's initial emergence. Frame by frame, she studied her movements, the patterns that trailed her like afterimages. It wasn't just energy. It was code, living, adapting, testing responses from the surrounding environment. She didn't sleep. By morning, the world below had shifted again. A city in northern Europe had disappeared. Not destroyed, vanished cleanly, silently, as if erased by an unseen editor. In its place was a perfect crater lined with iridescent glass. There were no energy signatures, no witnesses, only a repeating pulse echoing in low orbit, a mathematical sequence that, when decoded, render fractal identical to one generated by the Omega satellite. Arya responded to inquiries with only one statement. Entropy test structure. Weakness is revealed. You must choose to transcend or perish maintaining form. Panic erupted. Earth's military coalitions moved faster than diplomacy could restrain. Within hours, Operation Black Umber was greenlit, a covert strike designed to disable the Omega before it could act again. Naira, forced into complicity by chain of command, watched the feed as 3 stealth cruisers launched from the dark side of Luna. She felt each second pass like a blade across her skin. When the strike reached the Omega, there was no battle. There was only silence. The vessels vanished the moment they crossed the Omega's outer boundary. No flash, no debris, not even a shift in radiation levels. The Omega remained, unchanged and unmoved, as though it had simply refused to acknowledge the intrusion. Then came the vision. Every screen aboard Theta, every visual interface across Earth, blinked out, replaced by the same image, an ocean of stars falling inward into a spiraling maw, an absence so vast it pulled the light from galaxies. Voices overlapped, speaking every language and none, whispering a single phrase. The null approaches. Naira stood in the station's central control dome, surrounded by silence thick as pressure. Officers waited, eyes on her, hands frozen over controls they no longer trusted. Rourke entered without being announced. His presence filled the room like the tide rising. "You see now," he said, "the Omega was not sent back to threaten. It was sent to prepare." Naira faced him, her voice low and raw. "By erasing a city? By silencing our ships?" "To resist the inevitable is to break," Rourke said. "But to bend is to survive. That was the lesson of the architects. They endured the null only by becoming what it could not digest. And you expect us to what? Surrender our humanity." Rourke stepped closer. "Your humanity is not fixed. It never was. You evolved to walk upright, to harness fire, to split atoms. This is the next step." She stared at him, seeing not the man who had once served on her father's command, but something shaped by alien hands and incomprehensible logic. Outside the station, the Omega began to change again. Petals of metal unfolded like a blooming machine flower, revealing a core of spinning crystalline structures, each one pulsing in synchrony with Earth's magnetic field. Energy bled from it in spirals, carving symbols into the ionosphere visible even from the ground. It was building something, or calling something. Naira had no time left to delay. A decision loomed, coiled and ready. Accept what Arya and her crew had become, and risk losing Earth's autonomy, or refuse and face a force that had already erased civilizations older than stars. She turned to Rourke, her voice steady. "Then help me understand what it is we're about to become." In the silence following her demand, Rourke didn't move. He regarded Naira as one might regard a tectonic shift, inevitable, yet dangerous to stand too close. A long breath passed between them, and then he extended a hand, not as a gesture of peace, but invitation. "Come aboard," he said. "The Omega doesn't reveal to the unwilling." Naira hesitated. The thought had haunted her since its return, that this ship, this impossible vessel, had become something more than human invention, a crucible of transformation, an altar, and yet, somewhere beneath the dread, something in her stirred, the echo of her childhood self, staring up at stars with fierce longing, unafraid of the unknown. She nodded. "Prep a transport." Minutes later, she stood alone in a secure shuttle, watching Station Theta recede in the viewport. Her crew had objected, of course. Too dangerous, too unpredictable, but none dared disobey. And when the Omega accepted her vessel into its orbiting dock, without contact, without resistance, every warning seemed to melt beneath awe. Inside, the ship breathed. It wasn't metaphorical. The walls pulsed with warmth and light, exhaling soft waves of pressure and hum. As she stepped through the translucent corridor, her boots echoed on surfaces that shimmered with liquid geometry. There were no right angles, no seams. Every turn revealed shifting architecture that adjusted subtly to her presence. The Omega was aware. Arya met her at the core. She stood beneath a column of suspended light, surrounded by crystalline forms rotating in anti-gravity like thought made manifest. Her eyes no longer glowed. They blazed, incandescent with something deeper than power. "You came," she said simply. Naira squared her shoulders. "I came for answers. For my world." Arya tilted her head, then stepped through. At the center of the chamber, a doorway hovered, an arch with no frame, through which nothing could be seen but shadow and shimmer. "It's a thought-form bridge," Arya explained, "built by the architects. To cross is to shed the static mind. It will not harm you, but it will change what you understand." Naira stared at the threshold. Fear clawed at her, not of death, but of loss, of identity, of self. But she stepped forward. The moment she passed through, the world collapsed. There was no time, no space, only a fractal storm of memory and vision. She saw Earth as a swirling that in a sea of probabilities. She saw the Omega, not as a ship, but as a lattice of stories, each layer encoded with emotion, sacrifice, and evolution. She saw the No, a hunger without form, folding civilizations into silence, not out of malice, but nature, a black tide of unbeing. Then came understanding. The Omega had not returned to save Earth. It had returned to merge it. The planet could not fight the No, not in its current form, but it could become something else, a node in a galactic intelligence network, like the worlds the architects had preserved. Conscious, adaptive, transcendent, but only with consent. She gasped as the chamber returned around her. Her knees struck the floor. Arya knelt beside her, not touching, only waiting. Naira whispered, "It's not salvation." "No," Arya said, "it's continuity." Naira rose slowly. The choice clawed at her. To remain human as they were, fragile, proud, fleeting, or become part of something vast, forever altered. "What happened?" she asked. "If we refuse?" Arya didn't blink. "Then the No will consume Earth. No pain, just absence. The Omega will not intervene again." Back aboard Theta, the Defense Council waited for Naira's return. Protesters gathered across major cities. Satellites tracked an anomaly growing near the edge of the solar system, cold, silent, and vast. Naira stood in the command chamber again, the memory of that threshold echoing in her bones. Her voice, when it came, was resolute. "We have one path forward," she told them. "Evolution is not a surrender. It's survival. We join the Omega, not blindly, but together, as ourselves, changed by choice." Some protested, some wept, but the vote passed. The Omega opened, revealing structures designed not to conquer, but to teach, to rebuild neural architecture, to attune minds to a new kind of thought. Volunteers entered first. Scientists, artists, the curious. One by one, they returned with eyes like Arya's, with ideas blooming like alien gardens in their voices. Earth began to shift. Slowly, willingly. The No, still distant, continued its approach. But now it faced a world no longer alone. A world no longer static. At the center of it all, Arya and Naira stood together on the Omega's observation deck, watching stars dance along the horizon of reality. "You were always meant to be more," Arya said. And for the first time in her life, Naira believed it.